Welcome back. Tonight, we drift through the sleepy streets of Singapore. So wherever you are, however your day has been, you have nothing to do now but rest. There are no twists tonight, nothing to follow, nothing you need to remember in the morning. A city of glass and orchids, breathing slow beneath a warm and falling rain, will drift slowly, in no hurry to be anywhere at all. If these journeys help you rest, you're welcome to follow along, but only if you'd like to. And if you're listening now, leave the name of your city and the time where you are. Wherever you're listening from, you're in good company tonight. So let yourself settle, let your shoulders soften, and let your eyes close whenever they're ready. Breathe in slowly, and let it go. There's no need to stay awake for any of this. Just let the streets of Singapore come to you. While some nations are forged in the crucible of revolution and others emerge from methodical, long-term planning, Singapore's modern genesis is rooted in a profound and painful rupture. The story begins not with a triumphant declaration, but with a moment of deep uncertainty. A political separation that felt less like a choice and more like an abandonment. In 1965, the island was expelled from the Malaysian Federation, a political divorce that cast the small city-state adrift in a region of giants. Imagine the weight in the air on that day, as the news settled not as a victory, but as a crisis of survival. This sudden, stark independence, born from rejection, would become the defining condition of the nation's character, shaping every subsequent decision with the gravity of knowing there was no one else to rely on. From that pressure, a new form of resilience was born, because there was simply no other alternative. A city, much like any living organism, possesses fundamental needs. It must have space to breathe, and most critically, water to drink. For a diminutive island devoid of significant natural rivers, the question of water was a constant, quiet source of existential anxiety that shadowed its future. To solve this single, overriding problem, Singapore embarked on a quiet yet monumental wager on its own ingenuity. It conceived a comprehensive strategy, known as the Four National Taps, a plan so ambitious, it would require decades of sustained effort to fully realize. The core principle was to diversify its water sources, exploring every conceivable avenue, from continued imports to the meticulous collection of every raindrop in local reservoirs. Furthermore, the nation committed to pioneering new technologies for reclaiming and purifying water, and to mastering the complex process of desalination, literally wringing fresh water from the salt of the surrounding sea. This was a colossal engineering bet, a quiet declaration of self-reliance written in pipelines and treatment plants, and a solemn promise that the city would never allow itself to go thirsty. The river that flows through the center of a city often serves as its soul, reflecting its health and character. For a considerable period, the soul of Singapore was deeply unwell, as the Singapore River was not a place of beauty, but a fetid, open sewer. It was congested with the chaotic traffic of small cargo boats, or bumboats, while its banks were densely lined with crowded slums and noisy, polluting industries. The water itself ran dark and foul, a conduit for the city's waste flowing out to sea. Then, in the 1970s, a quiet but monumental decision was enacted: the river would be healed. This initiated a decade-long, arduous cleanup effort that involved relocating thousands of people, boats and businesses, and dredging the riverbed of its accumulated filth. The waters slowly cleared, and what was once a symbol of neglect and pollution underwent a metamorphosis into the pristine, placid waterway you see today. It stands as a quiet testament to a city's capacity to restore its own heart, one patient and difficult step at a time. In the years following its independence, Singapore confronted a severe crisis of shelter, with a majority of its populace residing in overcrowded, unsafe slums and squatter settlements. The city urgently required homes, and it needed them on an unprecedented scale and timeline. In 1960, a new statutory board was established with a single immense mandate to house an entire nation. The Housing and Development Board, universally known as the HDB, initiated one of the most intensive and relentless public construction campaigns in modern history. The objective was not merely to build, but to build with extraordinary speed, transforming the island's landscape in the process. Across the island, wooden shacks and makeshift villages gave way to towering concrete high-rises, and a new vertical world emerged, block by methodical block. Within a few short decades, this campaign had provided safe, modern homes for the vast majority of the population, resolving the housing crisis and simultaneously creating the city's signature visual identity, a skyline defined by the quiet, orderly rhythm of residential towers reaching for the sky. During the 1960s, global maritime trade stood on the precipice of a revolution, driven by a novel concept: packing goods into standardized steel boxes. This new paradigm was called containerization, and at the time, it was a largely unproven and capital-intensive technology that most established ports were hesitant to embrace. Yet Singapore, a diminutive new nation with few natural resources, perceived not risk, but a generational opportunity. The Port Authority made an audacious wager, deciding to invest heavily in building a dedicated container terminal, gambling that these standardized boxes were the inevitable future of global commerce. This prescient bet paid off spectacularly. As other ports around the world struggled to adapt to the new system, Singapore was prepared and ready, quickly becoming one of the world's busiest and most efficient transshipment hubs. That single decision became the bedrock of the entire economy, a quiet gamble on a simple metal box that would connect a small island to the rest of the globe, one container at a time. When Sir Stamford Raffles identified the ideal location for his new trading post, his vision penetrated beyond the immediate landscape, which was largely a mangrove swamp. The most promising spot for a deep-water harbor was not solid ground but a tidal marshland. Consequently, the very first act of creating the city was not one of construction, but of terrestrial creation itself. A massive landfilling operation commenced, with the necessary soil being excavated from a small adjacent hill. Day after day, laborers methodically dug into this hill, transporting the earth basket by basket to fill in the swamp and establish a viable shoreline. That hill has long since vanished, and the ground it was sacrificed to create is now among the most valuable real estate on the planet, Raffles Place, the heart of the financial district. The city's story begins with this elemental act of transformation, a quiet reminder that the very ground beneath your feet was the first thing to be imagined into existence. In 1967, Singapore initiated a nationwide effort to plant trees, planting them with methodical determination along new roads, within housing estates, and on any available patch of land. This marked the beginning of the Garden City vision, which was far more than a mere beautification project. It was a calculated economic strategy. The underlying belief was both simple and profound. A first-world economy necessitates a first-world environment. The nation's leaders reasoned that to attract foreign investment and highly skilled professionals, they needed to offer a clean, green, and exceptionally livable city. A lush, orderly urban landscape would signal stability, foresight, and a commitment to quality of life. The verdant canopy that now blankets Singapore is not an accident of nature, but the tangible result of a patient, long-term plan to make the city a better place to work, by first making it an exemplary place to live. For several years after independence, a substantial portion of Singapore's nascent economy depended on the presence of British military bases, which provided jobs, contracts, and a crucial sense of security. Then in 1968, London abruptly announced its intention to withdraw all forces east of the Suez. The news landed as an economic catastrophe, as the bases accounted for a staggering 20% of the country's gross domestic product. Their impending closure signaled mass unemployment and the threat of a deep, prolonged recession, presenting another moment of existential crisis for the young nation. There was no alternative but to pivot, and to do so with incredible speed. The country was thus compelled into a desperate and rapid push toward export-oriented industrialization, forced to create new jobs, new industries, and a new economic model, virtually from scratch. The sudden withdrawal was a painful shock, but it was also the critical juncture that forced Singapore to build the self-reliant, industrial economy that would define its future, a future born of sheer necessity. The fire began inconspicuously, but in the densely packed wooden settlement of Bukit Ho Swee, it spread with terrifying velocity. The Great Blaze of 1961 was a catastrophe on an almost unimaginable scale, and when the smoke finally cleared, a vast swathe of the city had been reduced to ash and ruin. In a single night, 16,000 people were left homeless, their lives and livelihoods consumed by the flames. The tragedy brutally exposed the inherent dangers of the city's overcrowded slums, serving as a tangible and devastating demonstration of the urgent need for safer, more permanent housing. The fire thus became a critical turning point, galvanizing public support for the government's ambitious and controversial plans for mass public housing. The towering HDB apartment blocks that rose in the following years were more than just buildings. They were a solemn promise that a disaster, like the Bukit Ho Swee fire, would never be allowed to happen again. Homes built from the ashes of a tragedy. In the 1970s, the government grew increasingly concerned about a population expanding too rapidly for the geographically constrained island to support. Consequently, a powerful and persuasive public campaign was launched, centered on the simple direct message, "Stop at 2." This comprehensive family planning program utilized posters, community talks, and a range of economic incentives and disincentives to encourage smaller families. It proved to be one of the most effective public campaigns in the nation's history. In fact, it was so profoundly successful that it precipitated an entirely new demographic challenge. By the 1980s, birth rates had plummeted so dramatically that a new problem loomed on the horizon: a rapidly aging population and a shrinking future workforce. In a remarkable display of pragmatism, the government reversed the policy, launching new campaigns that now encourage citizens to have more children. It's a strange and quiet story of a city in a constant state of planning, always looking ahead, and unafraid to change its mind when the future it predicted arrives ahead of schedule. How does one forge a singular national identity from a diverse population of immigrants speaking a multitude of languages? This was a fundamental challenge for early Singapore, and the answer was found in a carefully calibrated bilingual education policy. It was a pragmatic instrument of nation-building, performing a delicate balancing act between economic necessity and cultural preservation. English was established as the common language of administration, commerce and technology, a neutral and utilitarian tool that would enable all communities to work together on an equal footing. Simultaneously, the policy mandated that every student learn their designated mother tongue, Mandarin, Malay or Tamil, to ensure a continued connection to their cultural heritage, family, and history. This policy profoundly shaped the auditory landscape of the nation, creating a society where most people can navigate effortlessly between languages. It was a tool that sought to create unity in the marketplace, while protecting the diversity of the home, one classroom at a time. If you were to compare a map of Singapore from 1965 with one from today, you would notice a fundamental change. The island itself has physically grown. With no possibility of expanding outwards into neighboring territory, Singapore has instead expanded into the sea. Through a continuous, large-scale process of land reclamation, the country has increased its total land area by more than 25% since its independence, a quiet and colossal feat of engineering. The ground beneath your feet in many parts of the city, including the land that supports the world-renowned airport, the gleaming financial district, and entire new residential towns, was once open water. This new land was painstakingly created from sand, imported from other countries, and dredged from the seabed. The city did not merely build upon the land it was given, it methodically made the land it needed, pushing its coastline ever outwards to create new ground for its future. To the south of Singapore's mainland, there once lay a scattering of small, quiet islands, largely forgotten and undeveloped. However, some planners looked at this archipelago and envisioned something entirely different, the potential for a massive, integrated industrial powerhouse. The resulting plan was audacious in its scope, proposing to merge 7 of these disparate islands into a single, giant, man-made landmass through a process of extensive land reclamation. It was a feat of engineering on a staggering scale, filling in the seas between the islands to create a single, solid piece of ground. On this newly forged territory, a world-class petrochemical hub was constructed from scratch, complete with its own dedicated infrastructure. This place, named Jurong Island, is a restricted zone of pipelines, refineries and storage tanks that most Singaporeans will never visit. Yet it operates as one of the primary engines of the national economy. A hidden industrial giant created by literally rearranging the map. In February of 1942, the unthinkable occurred. The so-called impregnable fortress of Singapore, the bastion of the British Empire in Asia, surrendered to the invading Japanese army. This event was far more than a military defeat. It was a profound psychological blow that resonated across the entire colonial world. For decades, the local population had been conditioned to believe in the invincibility of the British, and the inherent superiority of their rule. That myth was irrevocably shattered in a matter of days. The sight of British and Australian soldiers being marched into captivity by an Asian power fundamentally altered the local consciousness, planting the seeds of a new political reality. The idea that they could no longer depend on a colonial power for their protection or their future began to take root, and with it, the desire for self-governance. The fall of Singapore was a moment of deep trauma, but it was also the quiet, painful birth of nationalism. In 1967, with the impending withdrawal of British forces, the newly independent nation of Singapore created an army to ensure its own defense. However, the system of mandatory military service, known as national service, was conceived as much as a tool for nation-building as it was for defense. The new country was a fragile mosaic of different races, religions, and social classes, with little shared identity. National service acted as a social crucible, forcing young men from every conceivable background into a prolonged, shared experience. For 2 years, the son of a wealthy businessman would live, train and eat, alongside the son of a laborer, all wearing the same uniform, and learning to rely on one another. In the discipline and egalitarianism of the barracks, a new, common identity was forged, creating Singaporeans out of Chinese, Malays and Indians. It built an army, certainly, but in a more profound sense it also built a country. For more than a decade, the city engaged in a protracted and intense debate over a single question: should it build a subway system? The proposed mass rapid transit, or MRT, would be an incredibly expensive undertaking, representing a huge financial risk for a small developing nation. Influential voices argued that a cheaper all-bus system would be a more prudent and sufficient solution. Ultimately, however, the decision was made to proceed with the ambitious rail network, a pivotal moment in the country's urban development. Construction began in the 1980s, a massive project that carved deep trenches through the heart of the city. The MRT's completion revolutionized public transport, connecting the island, alleviating traffic congestion, and fundamentally reshaping the urban fabric around its new stations. It was an immense wager that paid off, a decision that underscored the value of considering not just the immediate cost of a project, but the profound, long-term value it could create. Had you walked through a Singaporean market or coffee shop in the 1970s, your ears would have been met with a rich symphony of Chinese dialects: Hokkien, Cantonese, Teochew, and many others, reflecting the diverse origins of the population. Then, in 1979, the government launched the Speak Mandarin campaign, a policy designed to simplify communication within the Chinese community by promoting a single, common linguistic standard. The policy was controversial, as for many older Singaporeans, their dialect was the intimate language of family, culture, and identity. Nevertheless, the campaign was relentless and highly effective, with Mandarin becoming the dominant language of television, schools, and official discourse. Over the ensuing years, the auditory landscape of the city's neighborhoods and markets was fundamentally altered, as the symphony of dialects gradually faded, replaced by the steady cadence of Mandarin. It was a policy that unified, but also one that came at the cost of a certain linguistic diversity, changing the very sound of the city. Singapore Airlines was born from the dissolution of a partnership. When Malaysia-Singapore Airlines was divided in 1972, Malaysia retained the domestic routes, leaving the newly formed Singaporean carrier with the international routes and a small fleet of aircraft. As a small airline from a tiny, relatively unknown country, it faced immense competition from established global giants. Its strategy for survival was both simple and obsessive. It would compete on service. The airline focused on providing a level of in-flight comfort, attentiveness, and grace that other carriers could not match. This ethos was perfectly encapsulated by the Phan Kam Chawe Singapore girl, the image of the elegant stewardess, in her iconic sarong kebaya, which became a powerful and enduring symbol of the brand. By elevating service to an art form, Singapore Airlines not only survived but thrived, transforming a diminutive regional carrier into one of the world's most respected and recognized airline brands, in a masterclass of branding and operational excellence. The island situated just south of Singapore's mainland once bore a rather forbidding name, Pulau Belakang Mati, a Malay phrase that translates ominously to "island of death from behind." It was historically a place associated with pirates, and later became a key British military fortress. Following Singapore's independence, the island lay quiet and overgrown, its purpose obsolete. The government, however, decided it needed a new identity and a new function, holding a public contest to find a more suitable name. The winning entry was Sentosa, a Malay word meaning peace and tranquility. This was a deliberate act of semantic reinvention, a complete rebranding designed to erase a dark past and invent a more pleasant reality. The island of death was systematically redeveloped into an island of leisure, with military barracks and forts gradually giving way to hotels, beaches, and tourist attractions. It's a quiet lesson in how a place can be entirely redefined, starting with a simple change of name. How did Singapore achieve one of the highest rates of home ownership in the world, housing almost its entire population within a few decades? The answer lies in a compulsory national savings scheme known as the Central Provident Fund, or CPF. Under this system, every working citizen and their employer must contribute a portion of their salary to a personal fund, originally designed solely for retirement. However, the government introduced a brilliant policy innovation. It allowed citizens to use their accumulated CPF savings to make the down payment on a new HDB apartment. This single decision was the key that unlocked mass home ownership, transforming a retirement fund into a powerful instrument for nation building. It gave ordinary people a tangible stake in the country's success, directly linking their personal assets and future security to the nation's stability and prosperity. It was a simple, powerful idea that helped build a society of homeowners. In the early 20th century, Singapore was a place of pervasive fevers, with malaria being rampant across the island. The disease, carried by mosquitoes that bred in the island's abundant swamps and marshes, was a major public health crisis that severely hindered development. A systematic and relentless campaign was launched to eradicate the disease by targeting its source, the mosquitoes' breeding grounds. This involved the laborious process of draining vast swamps, clearing mangrove forests, and constructing an extensive network of concrete canals and drains to ensure water did not stagnate. It was a long and arduous struggle against nature, but it was ultimately successful. The campaign not only defeated malaria, but also produced a profound side effect, as the draining of the swamps opened up huge new tracts of land for urban development. The fight against a tiny insect ended up physically reshaping the island, turning unhealthy marshland into the foundation for a modern, growing city. The narrative of Singapore's economic success is often recounted through grand strategies and bold policies, but much of it was propelled by the quiet, relentless work of one individual. Goh Keng Swee, the nation's first finance minister. He was the principal architect of the country's economic miracle, creating the Economic Development Board with a clear and urgent mission to attract foreign investment. In the 1960s, this was an exceedingly difficult proposition, as Singapore was a new, unknown country with no industrial track record. Goh Keng Swee and his team therefore became evangelists for the Singapore story, personally meeting with the heads of multinational corporations. He would patiently and persuasively convince skeptical executives to establish factories on the island, offering a compelling package of tax incentives, political stability, and a disciplined workforce. He was the quiet salesman who convinced the world to take a chance on Singapore. The riots began over the fate of a single child. A Dutch girl named Maria Hertog, who had been raised by a Malay family during the Japanese occupation, became the subject of a bitter custody battle after the war. The case became a flashpoint for simmering religious and racial tensions, and when a colonial court ruled that she must be returned to her Dutch Catholic parents, riots erupted across the city. The violence of 1950 was a deep and lasting trauma for Singapore, revealing the profound fragility of the peace between the different communities living on the island. For the future leaders of the nation, the memory of these riots served as a powerful and sobering lesson. It directly shaped their deep, almost obsessive focus on racial and religious harmony after independence, with strict laws and policies promoting tolerance that were not abstract ideals, but a direct response to the memory of a city tearing itself apart. As Singapore achieved greater economic prosperity, its leaders began to articulate a governing philosophy centered on the concept of Agaun, Asian values. This ideology emphasized the importance of the community over the individual, stressing values such as order, social harmony, and respect for family and authority. It was deliberately positioned as a cultural bulwark, a way to guard against what was perceived as the excessive individualism and social decay of the West. This philosophy also served as an intellectual justification for Singapore's unique political path, which prioritized long-term stability and the collective good over the tenets of Western liberal democracy and individual freedoms. The promotion of Asian values was an assertion that there existed more than one valid path to modernity, and a statement that a country could be prosperous and modern, while holding fast to what it defined as its core cultural identity. It was a quiet, intellectual defense of the Singaporean way. Sometimes the most profound elements that shape a city are also the most deceptively simple. In Singapore, all traffic flows on the left side of the road, a direct and uncomplicated inheritance from more than a century of British colonial rule. It is a simple convention, a quiet habit passed down through the decades that most residents never question. Yet consider the profound and enduring consequences of that single, initial decision. It determined the entire physical layout of the road network, dictating the design of every interchange, bus stop, and traffic light. It shaped the configuration of the first vehicles imported to the island, and continues to dictate the daily, subconscious choreography of millions of commuters. This seemingly minor detail is a constant, moving reminder of the city's colonial past, an indelible piece of history written into the very asphalt of its streets. The three soaring towers of Marina Bay Sands form one of the world's most recognizable modern silhouettes, crowned by the ship-like sky park that appears to defy gravity. This immense park in the sky, which is longer than the Eiffel Tower is tall, rests atop the towers, but its stability is a marvel of hidden engineering. As all tall buildings do, the three hotel towers are designed to sway slightly in high winds. To accommodate this independent movement, the Sky Park was constructed with massive, custom-designed steel joints at the points of connection. These huge bearings function like giant knuckles, allowing each tower to move and flex with the wind, without transferring stress to the park structure above. It is a quiet, ingenious solution that permits this incredible structure to float peacefully above the city, gently breathing with the wind nearly 200 meters in the air. They appear as if they were conceived for a science fiction film, the towering tree-like structures of gardens by the bay, each covered in a living skin of thousands of plants. These super trees, however, are much more than just monumental vertical sculptures. They are functional giants that represent a quiet fusion of nature and technology. 11 of these massive structures are hard at work even as they stand still, their steel frames embedded with environmental systems. Photovoltaic cells, much like leaves, harvest the sun's energy to power the nightly light shows, while integrated systems collect rainwater for irrigation in the nearby conservatories. They are a beautiful and tangible example of the city's ecological thinking, not merely mimicking nature's form, but also emulating its function, turning a stunning landmark into a quiet, working component of the garden's ecosystem. The Marina Bay Financial District presents a landscape of pristine streets and gleaming towers, where roads are perpetually smooth and pavements are flawlessly maintained. You will almost never witness the disruption of a road being excavated for repairs, a feat made possible by an invisible world just a few meters beneath the surface. Underpinning the entire district is an extensive network of common services tunnels, clean, well-lit, and surprisingly spacious underground passages. These are not designed for people or traffic, but for the city's vital arteries, its power lines, water pipes, and fiber optic cables. When a utility line requires maintenance, or a new one needs to be installed, workers can simply access these tunnels and perform their tasks without ever disturbing the streets above. It is a massive, unseen piece of infrastructure that ensures the city runs smoothly, a hidden world of perfect order beneath the perfect streets. There is a pedestrian bridge across the bay that appears less like a crossing, and more like a swirling piece of kinetic sculpture. The Helix Bridge, which connects the city center to the waterfront, features a design that is a quiet and elegant nod to the very building blocks of life. Its structure is directly modeled on the double helix of DNA, with two spiraling steel tubes creating a powerful sense of movement and lightness. The biological reference, however, goes deeper than just its form. If you walk across the bridge at night, you might notice that pairs of letters are illuminated in red and green on the floor: C and G, A and T. These represent cytosine, guanine, adenine, and thymine, the four essential bases of the DNA molecule. It is a subtle, beautiful detail, a quiet reminder of the deep and intricate connections between art, science, and the fundamental patterns that constitute our world. East Coast Park is a long, verdant stretch of coastline, a beloved space for picnics, cycling, and weekend relaxation. The beach is wide, the park is spacious, and a busy expressway runs parallel to the shore, all of which feels as if it has always been here. However, if you know precisely where to look, you can find a small, unassuming stone marker, half hidden in the grass. This simple marker indicates the position of the original shoreline as it was in the 1960s. Standing at this spot, you come to the profound realization that everything you see before you, the park, the beach, the land beneath the highway, all the way to the water's edge far in the distance, is new land, meticulously reclaimed from the sea. The small, weathered stone is a quiet, humble monument, not to a hero or a great event, but to a memory of a former coastline, a silent reminder of how much this city has physically willed itself to grow. From a distance, the pinnacle at Duxton appears to be a series of sleek, private skyscrapers, but it is in fact a public housing project that completely rethinks the possibilities of high-density living. Its 7 towers, each soaring to 50 stories, are linked by 2 enormous sky gardens on the 26th and 50th floors. These are the longest sky gardens in the world, each one a continuous, 500-meter-long park in the sky, offering jogging tracks, playgrounds and benches with breathtaking panoramic views. While the apartments are reserved for residents, the Sky Garden on the 50th floor is open to the public for a nominal fee, providing access to one of the best views in the city. It's a remarkably democratic approach to urban design, a statement that beautiful spaces and stunning vistas should be accessible to everyone, not just the privileged few. The complex known today as Chijmes is a beautiful collection of courtyards, upscale restaurants and quiet bars, a popular destination for an evening meal or a drink. The heart of this place, however, is much older, and tells a very different story. The entire compound was originally the convent of the Holy Infant Jesus, a Catholic school for girls, and the stunning building at its center was its chapel. Today, this magnificent Gothic Revival chapel has been deconsecrated and serves as a secular event space, its pews replaced by tables for weddings and corporate functions. Yet, the building itself has been impeccably preserved, with its high vaulted ceilings, intricate columns, and glorious stained glass windows, all remaining intact. It is a strange and peaceful experience to stand within this space, a former place of quiet worship that has found a new life, its sacred architecture, now framing the city's modern social rituals. Despite being a highly urbanized city-state, Singapore still contains pockets of surprising wildness. In Labrador Park, located on the southern coast, the jungle feels thick and ancient, and if you wander from the main paths, you might stumble upon something unexpected. Hidden within the dense greenery are the moss-covered ruins of Fort Pasir Panjang, a British military installation built to defend Singapore's harbour in the years before World War II. You can discover the dark, damp entrances to underground tunnels, and explore the concrete bunkers, now half swallowed by tree roots and hanging vines. It feels like discovering a lost city, a tangible link to the island's colonial past. These ruins are a quiet reminder that even in this most modern of cities, history is not always confined to a museum. Sometimes, it is waiting to be found, sleeping peacefully in the jungle. The National Gallery Singapore faced a unique architectural challenge: how to unite two of the city's most significant historic buildings, the former Supreme Court and City Hall, into a single cohesive museum. The solution was both brilliant and elegant. The architects designed a delicate, modern roof canopy that appears to float between and over the two grand colonial-era structures. This canopy, woven from glass and aluminum into an intricate filigree pattern, is not merely beautiful, but also highly functional. It is precisely engineered to filter the harsh tropical sun, casting a soft, dappled light into the vast atrium below, much like the leaves of a mature tree. It is a stunning piece of modern architecture that respectfully connects the historic buildings rather than competing with them, creating a new, light-filled public space where past and present can meet. At the heart of the Jewel Changi Airport lies a feature that invariably stops travelers in their tracks: the rain vortex. As the world's tallest indoor waterfall, it sends a torrent of water cascading 40 meters from an oculus in the glass roof down to the basement level. It is a spectacular piece of design, a mesmerizing display of nature and architecture in harmony. Yet in Singapore, breathtaking beauty often serves a practical purpose. The rain vortex is not merely for show. It is a functional component of the building's ecosystem. The massive flow of water creates a cooling microclimate within the vast glass dome, and the collected rainwater is recirculated through the waterfall, before being reused for the irrigation of the thousands of plants in the surrounding terraced forest. It is a perfect encapsulation of the Singaporean approach, creating something breathtaking that also works diligently behind the scenes. As you walk through the older historic districts of Singapore, you will notice a remarkably consistent architectural feature: a continuous, sheltered walkway at the front of the traditional shophouses. This is the 5-foot way, and it is such a defining element of the city's character that it feels like a deliberate stylistic choice. In reality, it was born from a legal requirement. When Sir Stamford Raffles was laying out his town plan in the 1820s, he included a regulation mandating that all shophouses must provide a public right-of-way of a specific depth, roughly 5 feet, to create a sheltered path for pedestrians, protecting them from the tropical sun and rain. It was a practical rule that had an unintended but beautiful consequence, creating one of the most distinctive and beloved features of the city's streetscape, a network of informal public corridors that are still walked every day. In the central courtyard of the Suntec City complex stands a giant, circular bronze ring that forms the Fountain of Wealth, once listed as the largest fountain in the world. Its design is far from accidental. It is based on the Hindu mandala, a spiritual symbol representing the universe, and its construction adheres to the principles of feng shui, the Chinese art of placement. The massive bronze ring is said to represent unity and prosperity, and crucially, the water flows inwards, not outwards, symbolizing wealth pouring in and being retained within the complex. At certain times of the day, the main cascade is turned off, allowing visitors to walk around a smaller fountain at the very center, touching the water in a ritual for good luck. It is a quiet intersection of ancient beliefs and modern commerce, right in the heart of the city. The twin domes of the Esplanade Performing Arts Center are one of the most distinctive shapes on the Singapore skyline, their spiky, textured surface earning the building the affectionate local nickname, the durian, after the thorny tropical fruit. This unique building skin, however, is not merely a stylistic choice, but a highly engineered solution to the specific challenge of the tropical sun. The roofs are clad in over 7,000 triangular aluminum sunshades, each one precisely angled according to the path of the sun throughout the day. This sophisticated system is designed to admit the maximum amount of ambient light while blocking the direct heat, keeping the vast glass atriums inside bright and cool, without requiring excessive air conditioning. It is a clever, climate-responsive design, a beautiful piece of engineering that is both practical and poetic. Connecting two green hills, the Henderson Waves Bridge flows like a ribbon of wood and steel, the highest pedestrian bridge in Singapore. It undulates 36 meters above the road below, its form a beautiful, wave-like sculpture against the sky. The structure is composed of sweeping steel ribs, which are clad in thousands of slats of yellow bala wood, a dense hardwood ideal for the tropical climate. Perhaps the most wonderful feature of the bridge is hidden within its curves. As the wave-like structure rises and falls, it creates shell-like alcoves on the inside of the curves, furnished with benches that provide sheltered spots for people to sit and rest. You can find yourself in one of these alcoves, surrounded by the warm wood, watching the city pass by below, nestled inside the belly of this gentle wooden wave. The old Tanjong Pagar railway station is a place of profound silence now. Its tracks removed and its platforms empty. The station, which once served as the southern terminus connecting Singapore to the rest of the Malay Peninsula, ceased operations in 2011. The main building, however, remains preserved as a national monument. a beautiful example of Art Deco architecture. Stepping into the grand main hall, you can feel the weight of history in the high ceilings, and the quiet, waiting stillness of the space. The most remarkable features are the large tiled murals on the walls, which depict the industries and landscapes of 1930s Malaya: rice farming, tin mining, and rubber tapping. They are a silent testament to the golden age of rail travel, a beautiful faded memory of a time when this silent hall was a bustling gateway to another world. The luxury condominiums at Reflections at Keppel Bay do not resemble conventional residential buildings. They comprise a collection of 6 curving glass towers of varying heights, which seem to lean and bend as if in motion, forming a futuristic sculpture on the waterfront. The towers are interconnected by sky bridges, allowing residents to move between buildings high above the ground. This unconventional curving form is not merely for aesthetic effect. The architect designed the towers so that no 2 adjacent apartments would share the exact same view. Each unit possesses a slightly different orientation, a design choice that maximizes both privacy and the panoramic vistas of the sea and the city. It is a building that has been meticulously designed from the inside out, where the unique exterior shape is a direct result of creating a unique interior experience for every resident. Amidst the modern high-rises of Singapore, there exists a quiet cluster of low, white buildings nestled in lush greenery, known as Gillman Barracks. The name itself hints at its past as a British military encampment built in 1936, its clean-lined colonial-era buildings once housing soldiers. Today, these same structures house something entirely different. The entire site has been conserved and repurposed into a vibrant arts hub, with the former barracks now home to contemporary art galleries showcasing work from around the world. Creative firms and chic restaurants have also taken up residence, creating a unique atmosphere where one can wander through a historic military camp while contemplating the latest in modern art. It is a perfect example of the city's talent for adaptive reuse, preserving its past not as a static museum, but as a living, breathing part of its present. Some buildings are famous for what was created within their walls. The old Ford factory is famous for what was lost. This unassuming Art Deco-style factory is the preserved historical site, where the British officially surrendered Singapore to the Japanese in 1942, a moment of profound humiliation that altered the course of the island's history. Today, the factory is a museum, a quiet place of remembrance and reflection. The centerpiece of this museum is the original boardroom, where the surrender took place, which has been preserved exactly as it was on that fateful day. The long wooden table, the chairs, and the clock on the wall are all still there. To stand in this room is to feel the immense weight of history, a somber, silent space that serves as a powerful reminder of one of the darkest moments in the city's past, preserved for future generations. There was a time when the hills of western Singapore were dotted with long, tunnel-like kilns, known as dragon kilns for their shape. which snaked up the hillsides like mythical beasts. They were the heart of a once thriving pottery industry. Today, almost all of them have vanished, with only 2 remaining. One of these is located at the Thao Quang Pottery Jungle, a rustic, family-run business. The long brick kiln is a beautiful, handmade relic from another era, sheltered by a simple corrugated roof. While it is no longer the center of a large industry, it is not a dead museum piece either. A few times a year, a community of artists and potters gathers to fire up the old dragon, in a slow, laborious process that takes days. It is a way of keeping a tradition alive, a quiet, creative ritual that connects the potters of today with the history of their craft. Bukit Brown Cemetery is a quiet, largely forgotten corner of the city, and one of the largest Chinese cemeteries outside of China. For decades, it was left to the care of nature, allowing the jungle to grow over the ornate tombs and obscure the paths, creating a place that feels wild and deeply atmospheric. The tombs themselves function as an open-air museum of sculpture and social history, with intricate carvings, faded photographs of the deceased, and unique features like the stone statues of Sikh guards placed to protect the tombs in the afterlife. Although parts of the cemetery were controversially exhumed to make way for a new highway, much of it remains a peaceful, slightly eerie testament to the lives of the city's pioneers. It is a place where one can feel the weight of history and the quiet power of nature, reclaiming what was once hers. For several decades, the Rochor Center was a cherished local landmark, a public housing and shopping complex famous for its 4 apartment blocks, each painted a different, vibrant color: red, blue, green, and yellow. These brightly colored blocks were a cheerful, iconic part of the cityscape, a familiar reference point for everyone who lived and worked in the area, and a symbol of an older, more playful style of public architecture. However, in a city that is in a constant state of renewal, very little is permanent. In 2018, the Rochor Center was demolished to make way for a new expressway, a stark and unsentimental example of the city's relentless cycle of development. Its demolition served as a quiet reminder that in Singapore, even the most beloved landmarks can be sacrificed in the name of progress, leaving behind only memories and photographs. The area surrounding the Singapore River is a carefully preserved historic landscape, where grand colonial-era buildings like the Asian Civilizations Museum create a distinct sense of old-world charm. When a major new electrical substation was required for the district, planners faced a dilemma. A large, industrial building would have irrevocably marred the historic skyline. The solution was to make the substation disappear. A massive piece of critical infrastructure was constructed entirely underground, humming quietly beneath a pristine, manicured lawn right next to the museum. There is no visible sign of the powerful engineering that lies just beneath the surface. It is a perfect example of the city's willingness to go to extraordinary lengths and expense to preserve the aesthetic integrity of its built environment, even if it means burying its own power. The Pearl Bank Apartments was one of Singapore's most iconic modern buildings, a striking horseshoe-shaped residential tower that stood as a masterpiece of 1970s brutalist architecture. Its unique, cylindrical form was not merely a stylistic flourish, it was a functional design intended to maximize the number of apartments with panoramic views, and to promote natural airflow through the building. For years it was a beloved, if controversial, landmark, and a long, passionate debate took place regarding its conservation as a piece of architectural heritage. In the end, the argument for redevelopment prevailed, and in 2020, the iconic building was demolished to make way for a new, more luxurious condominium. The loss of Pearl Bank was mourned by many as a powerful reminder that in the perpetual contest between history and profit, history does not always win, leaving a ghost on the skyline for those who remember its unique shape. The Istana, the official residence of the President of Singapore, is a grand, white colonial-era mansion, set within a large, open park, a symbol of the state used for formal receptions and ceremonies. Beneath its pristine lawns, however, lies a secret from a more turbulent time. In the 1930s, with the threat of war looming in Asia, a deep bunker was constructed beneath the grounds. This 19-meter deep command center, a hidden world of concrete and steel, was designed to serve as a shelter for the colonial governor in the event of an air raid. It is a strange thought that under the calm, green expanse of the Istana grounds, there exists another, hidden structure, a relic from a time of fear, sleeping silently beneath the surface of the modern, peaceful state. There is a patch of grass, and an expressway tunnel entrance where a modernist masterpiece once stood. The National Theatre, built in 1963 through public donations, was one of the most remarkable buildings of its era, a symbol of the new nation's cultural aspirations. It was a modernist marvel, with a striking facade, featuring 5 points, representing the 5 stars of the Singapore flag, and an innovative roof supported by 2 massive cantilevers that left the sides of the theatre open to the tropical air. Unfortunately, the building was plagued by structural problems, and in 1986, it was declared unsafe and demolished. Today, almost no physical trace of it remains. Its former site is now just an anonymous space near an expressway. It is a lost landmark, a ghost of the city's architectural past, that exists now only in photographs, and in the memories of those who experienced it. During the peak of a busy lunch hour, a Singaporean hawker center can appear to be a scene of chaos, yet there is an invisible system of order that holds it all together. This silent, unwritten rule is known as the chope. If you see an empty table with a packet of tissues placed on a seat, you understand that the table is reserved. This is the local custom for claiming a spot while you go to order your food, and the placeholder can be anything from a staff pass to a small umbrella. It is a system based entirely on mutual trust and an unspoken social contract. No one will move your tissue packet, and no one will take your seat. This small, everyday ritual speaks volumes about the city's social fabric, a quiet piece of collective choreography that allows thousands of people to share a meal in a crowded space with remarkable efficiency and a minimum of fuss. Ordering coffee in Singapore is a distinct linguistic ritual, a small performance of local culture enacted thousands of times a day at every coffee stall, or kopitiam. You don't simply ask for a coffee. You use a special local shorthand, a blend of Malay and Chinese dialects. Kopi is the default, coffee with condensed milk and sugar. If you want it without sugar, you ask for kopi kosong. Black coffee with no sugar is kopio kosong, while Kopi C will get you coffee with evaporated milk and sugar. This complex vocabulary for a simple drink is more than just a way of ordering. It's a shared secret code that instantly marks you as someone who understands the city's rhythms. It is a taste of home, a familiar sound that is as much a part of the morning as the aroma of the coffee itself. Hainanese chicken rice is widely celebrated as Singapore's unofficial national dish, but its story begins on the island of Hainan in southern China. Immigrants from that region brought their native Wenchang chicken recipe with them, but in the kitchens of Singapore the dish was adapted and perfected. Local cooks refined the art of poaching the chicken to succulent perfection, and crucially, mastered the technique of cooking the rice in the rich chicken broth, infusing it with ginger and pandan leaves to create a fragrant, oily rice that is the true star of the dish. They also developed a unique chili sauce, bright and tangy, with a hint of lime and ginger, which provides the perfect counterpoint to the subtle flavor of the chicken. The version of chicken rice you eat in Singapore today was not merely imported, it was invented here, a quiet story of culinary evolution, and a delicious piece of history served on a plate. Long before the first stirrings of traffic or the hum of the first MRT train, the city awakens to a natural alarm clock, the Asian Koel bird. Its call is one of the most distinctive sounds of a Singaporean morning, not a gentle chirp, but a loud, insistent and repetitive call that builds in a rising crescendo. Koel, Koel, Koel. The sound echoes through the high-rise housing estates, often beginning well before sunrise. For some, it is a welcome connection to nature in a dense urban environment. For others, it is a relentless annoyance, a feathered snooze button that cannot be silenced. For everyone, however, it is a familiar rhythm in the city's soundscape, the persistent announcement of a new day arriving, and a reminder that even in this most modern of cities, nature still insists on having a voice. For a few weeks each year, a different kind of smoke permeates the evening air in Singapore. During the Hungry Ghost Festival, large, round metal bins are placed along sidewalks and in open community spaces for the ritual burning of joss paper, or hell money, and other paper offerings. This is a rite of remembrance for ancestors, and a gesture of appeasement for the wandering ghosts believed to return to the world of the living during this lunar month. As evening falls, you will see people quietly feeding stacks of paper into the flames. The sight of smoke curling into the twilight sky, the distinct smell of burning paper, and the orange glow from the bins, all contribute to a quiet, seasonal rhythm. It is a deeply personal act of faith and remembrance, performed publicly on the streets, a moment when the spiritual world feels very close, just on the other side of the smoke. The Pasar Malam, or night market, is a temporary, roving festival that has no permanent home. It appears suddenly in an open field or a car park within a residential neighborhood, transforming a quiet suburban space into a hub of light, sound, and scent for a few weeks. The air becomes thick with the aroma of street food cooking on grills and in deep fryers, offering classic snacks like the savory Ramly burger, alongside newer inventions like deep-fried Oreos. Then, as quickly as it materialized, it vanishes. The stalls are packed up, the lights are taken down, and the field returns to its quiet state. The Pasar Malam moves on to the next town, a traveling celebration that brings a brief, bright burst of energy to the heartlands, before disappearing into the night, leaving only the lingering memory of its flavors. The arteries of Singapore are its MRT stations, and during the frenetic rush hour, the escalators are critical for maintaining the constant flow of people. Here a simple unwritten rule of etiquette is observed by all. You stand on the left, leaving the right side clear for walking. This simple act of collective discipline happens automatically, a piece of social coordination that requires no signs or announcements. It is a small, silent agreement that allows those in a hurry to move more quickly, while others can rest. This is a beautiful example of unconscious, citywide cooperation, a quiet choreography that keeps human traffic flowing smoothly through the veins of the city. It is a small detail, but it is one of the many things that makes the city work, one person at a time, one escalator ride at a time. During the Chinese New Year period, a unique sound emanates from restaurants and homes across Singapore. A chorus of shouting and laughter, mixed with the clatter of chopsticks. This is the sound of the Unwritten, lo hei toss. Families and colleagues gather around a large platter of a colorful raw fish salad called yuxing, which contains many ingredients, each with a symbolic meaning. Before eating, everyone stands and, while adding various sauces and condiments, shouts auspicious phrases for the new year, wishing for good health, success, and wealth. Then, in a moment of chaotic celebration, everyone uses their chopsticks to toss the ingredients as high as possible. The belief is that the higher you toss, the better your fortune will be in the coming year. It is a messy, joyful ritual, a moment of shared hope, and a collective performance to welcome good fortune. In the quiet suburban housing estates, there is a familiar sound that can evoke a sense of childhood nostalgia. The simple, tinkling bell of the ice cream uncle. These are typically elderly vendors, who sell ice cream from a motorcycle with a sidecar that has been converted into a freezer, a nostalgic link to a simpler time. When you hear the bell, you can go down to buy a rectangular block of ice cream in simple flavors like chocolate, sweet corn, or durian. The real choice is in how it is served, either sandwiched between two thin crispy wafers, or in the uniquely Singaporean style, nestled in a slice of soft, multicolored rainbow bread. It is a simple, inexpensive, and delicious treat, a small, sweet ritual that has managed to survive for decades in the heartlands of the city. When durian season arrives, the rhythm of the city subtly changes. The king of fruits is a famously divisive delicacy, adored by many for its creamy texture and complex flavor, yet reviled by others for its notoriously pungent aroma. During the peak season, temporary tented stalls materialize in open spaces across the island, simple affairs with piles of the spiky fruit, and a few plastic tables and chairs for on-the-spot feasting. People gather in the evenings to select their fruit, have the vendor expertly open it, and consume it right there, often with plastic gloves. The air around these stalls becomes thick with the fruit's unmistakable scent. It is a seasonal ritual, a time when a shared passion for a strange and powerful fruit brings people together in the warm, humid night. The ground floor of most public housing blocks in Singapore is a deliberately open and airy space known as the Gond Tower of Void Deck. This feature is an intentional element of architectural design, meant to serve as a blank canvas, a flexible, sheltered area for the community to use as it sees fit. And it is used for everything. The Void Deck functions as the community's shared living room, where you might see elderly men playing chess, children learning to ride bicycles, or students studying. On a weekend it might be transformed for a Malay wedding, adorned with colorful fabrics and filled with the scent of cooking. A few days later, the very same space might host a Chinese funeral, with solemn white tents and quiet mourners. It is a space that holds all of life's milestones, a quiet stage for the daily drama of community life. In Singapore, the culinary day does not end after dinner. There is a distinct fourth meal known simply as supper. This cherished late-night ritual typically takes place sometime between 11 at night and 2 in the morning. After a movie, after a late shift at work, or simply to satisfy a craving, people head out to the city's late-night eateries, which come alive with a quiet energy. You can find people from all walks of life gathering for a plate of roti prata, the flaky Indian flatbread, a steaming bowl of bak kut teh, a peppery pork rib soup, or a basket of dim sum. It is a time to unwind with friends, to satisfy a craving, and to extend the day just a little longer. It is a quiet, relaxed rhythm, a shared understanding that the day doesn't have to end just because it's dark outside. To an uninitiated ear, a conversation between two Singaporeans can be a little perplexing, as the local English Creole, known as Singlish, possesses its own unique rhythm and melody. A key feature is the use of particles like la, le, and lor at the end of sentences. These are not mere filler words. They add a rich layer of nuance, attitude, and emotion to what is being said. Okela can be a simple confirmation, while Okele might suggest a hint of surprise, and Okelaw could imply a sense of resignation. Learning to use these particles correctly is an essential part of sounding like a local, as they provide a musicality and an efficiency that is quintessentially Singaporean. They are the small words that carry a large part of the city's conversational soul. The morning wet market is a ritual for the senses, a world away from the sterile, air-conditioned supermarkets. The floors are perpetually slick with water, the reason for its name, and the air is a potent, chaotic mixture of smells: the sharp, salty scent of fresh seafood on ice, the metallic tang from a butcher's stall, the sweet fragrance of tropical fruits, and the earthy aroma of spices and herbs. It is a vibrant, bustling place, filled with the sounds of vendors calling out their wares, and the chatter of regular customers haggling and gossiping. For many older residents, a trip to the wet market is a daily ritual, a place to procure the freshest ingredients, catch up on neighborhood news, and feel the vibrant, chaotic pulse of the community as it begins its day. The story of chili crab, one of Singapore's most celebrated culinary exports, begins with a humble pushcart in the 1950s. A couple, Che Yam Tian and Lim Chun Ji, were selling crabs by the sea, initially just steaming them. At a customer's suggestion, they began stir-frying the crabs with a sweet and spicy tomato-based sauce, a creation that proved to be an instant hit. Their small pushcart business eventually grew into a restaurant. Later, a famous chef took their original recipe and refined it, adding sambal for extra heat, and most importantly, swirling beaten eggs into the sauce just before serving. This innovation created the thick, silky and rich gravy that is the signature of the dish as we know it today. It is a story of humble beginnings and culinary evolution, a dish born on the street and perfected in a restaurant kitchen. In the weeks preceding Deepavali, the Hindu festival of lights, the neighborhood of Little India undergoes a spectacular transformation. As dusk falls each evening, the streets are set ablaze by a dazzling light-up, with massive, ornate arches covered in glittering lights spanning the main thoroughfare, depicting peacocks, oil lamps, and other festive symbols. The entire area glows with a magical golden light, and the rhythm of the neighborhood changes. The 5-foot ways become a bustling nightly bazaar, the air filled with the sound of festive music, and the scent of incense and jasmine. Crowds of shoppers throng the streets, buying new saris, intricate gold jewelry, and boxes of colorful sweets. It is a time of joyous sensory overload, a vibrant ritual where the whole neighborhood seems to pulse with light, color, and the happy energy of celebration. In the months of July and August, a new sound becomes an integral part of the city's rhythm: the roar of fighter jets. Singapore's National Day falls on August 9th, and preparations for the Grand Parade's aerial display begin long in advance. Every weekend, the pilots of the Republic of Singapore Air Force conduct rehearsals, providing an unofficial and regular air show for the entire city. You can be walking through a park or looking out your apartment window when a formation of jets will suddenly scream across the sky, sometimes releasing trails of red and white smoke, the colors of the national flag. It is a sound that is both startling and familiar, a seasonal high-decibel reminder that the nation's birthday is approaching, and a powerful display of patriotic pride that briefly interrupts the city's usual peace. The Kallang Wave is a stadium ritual that is uniquely Singaporean. Born in the old National Stadium in Kallang during a soccer match in the 1980s. It is a simple, beautiful moment of collective, unscripted action. Spectators in one section of the stadium stand up and raise their arms, then quickly sit down again, with the adjacent section immediately following suit, and then the next, and the next. This creates a ripple effect, a wave of human motion that flows through the entire crowd, a moment of pure unscripted joy that transforms the crowd into a single living organism. Although the old stadium is gone, the ritual lives on in the new National Stadium, a moment of collective euphoria, and a simple, powerful expression of unity that can turn a crowd of strangers into a single roaring wave. On Wednesday and weekend afternoons, you will notice quiet, orderly lines forming outside small, unassuming shops across the island. These are the Singapore Pools outlets, the only legal venues for betting on the lottery. This is the low-key ritual of placing a bet on 4D or Toto, a widespread and almost mundane habit. People from all walks of life stand patiently in line, clutching small slips of paper with their chosen numbers, some derived from birth dates or anniversaries, others inspired by dreams or even license plates. There is no loud excitement in these queues, just a quiet, patient hope. It is a small, regular investment in the possibility of a windfall, a chance to change one's fortune with 4 small numbers. The queue itself is a space of quiet, communal dreaming, a shared ritual of chance. A citywide regulation in Singapore prohibits convenience stores and supermarkets from selling takeaway alcohol after 10:30 p.m. This rule, intended to curb late-night public disturbances, has inadvertently created its own small, unofficial ritual, the 10:25 p.m. beer run. As the cut-off time approaches, a quiet urgency fills the air, as people make a last-minute dash to the nearest 7-Eleven or Cheers, quickly grabbing their cans of beer or bottles of wine, and hurrying to the cashier. It is a mini-drama that plays out every night across the island, a shared, city-wide race against the clock for one last drink to take home. The rule, designed to create a more orderly end to the evening, has instead created a new, slightly frantic rhythm in the city's nightly pulse. Once a year, the streets of Singapore host a powerful and visceral ritual of faith. During the Hindu festival of Thaipusam, thousands of devotees undertake a long pilgrimage between two major temples. While many carry simple offerings of milk pots, some perform a more extreme act of devotion by carrying elaborate structures called kavade. These large, ornate frames, decorated with peacock feathers and images of deities, are not merely carried, but are attached to the devotee's body, with hooks, spikes and skewers that pierce their skin. The procession moves slowly through city streets, which are closed to traffic for the occasion, temporarily reclaiming the modern city for an ancient spiritual purpose. For a few hours, the normal rhythm of the city stops, making way for this powerful and deeply personal expression of faith, penance and gratitude. The weekend possesses a special rhythm at East Coast Park, a long, thin stretch of reclaimed land along the southeastern coast that functions as the city's collective backyard. It is a place dedicated to communal relaxation. By late afternoon, the air begins to fill with the scent of barbecue smoke, as families and groups of friends gather around the public pits, grilling satay and chicken wings. The dedicated cycling path becomes a constant stream of motion, a shared space for serious cyclists in lycra, families on rented quadcycles, and children on scooters. People fly kites, fish from the shore, or simply sit on the beach and watch the ships on the horizon. It is a simple, unpretentious scene of the city at ease, a place where the relentless pace of the week gives way to the gentle, smoky, and happy rhythm of a weekend by the sea. During the Hungry Ghost Festival, you might happen upon a strange spectacle in a neighborhood square, a brightly lit, flashy stage, where singers in glittering costumes belt out loud songs in Chinese dialects. This is a getai or song stage, an open-air concert that is a fixture of the festival. These performances are intended to entertain both the living and the spirits of the dead, who are believed to roam the earth during this month. While the atmosphere is loud and festive, a closer look reveals a strange detail. The front row of plastic chairs is always left empty. These seats are respectfully reserved for the unseen guests, the ghosts themselves. It is a quiet, slightly eerie mark of respect, in the midst of a loud and colorful performance, a reminder of who the true guests of honor are supposed to be. If one activity could be described as a national pastime in Singapore, it might be the act of queuing. Singaporeans are renowned for their patience and extraordinary orderliness when standing in line, whether it's for a new smartphone, a limited edition sneaker, or a bowl of Michelin-starred noodles at a hawker stall. The queues are never chaotic. They are neat, single-file lines with a respectful distance maintained between each person. The queue itself becomes a kind of temporary community, a space of quiet, communal anticipation, where people chat with their neighbors and collectively enforce the unspoken rules. It is more than just waiting. It is a shared experience, a testament to the city's love of order, and its belief that good things are worth waiting for, patiently, and in an orderly fashion. The sarong party girl is a cultural archetype from a specific period in Singapore's history, a slightly derogatory term that emerged in the post-colonial era to describe a local woman perceived as exclusively preferring to date Western expatriates. She was often stereotyped as materialistic and exotic, a figure of both fascination and scorn. The name itself, juxtaposing the traditional sarong with the modern party girl, captured the cultural anxieties of a newly independent nation, grappling with its identity and its relationship with the West. While the term is much less common now and feels dated, it remains a part of the city's social lexicon, a quiet relic from a bygone era, and a reminder of the complex and sometimes uncomfortable conversations about race, class and identity that have shaped the city's social rhythms. There is a subtle and strange secret concerning time in Singapore. The clocks are technically incorrect. Geographically, the island is situated in what should be the GMT+7 time zone. However, in 1982, Singapore adjusted its time forward to GMT+8 in order to align with the business hours of Malaysia and key financial markets like Hong Kong. This pragmatic decision has a peculiar effect on the daily rhythm of life, causing the sun to rise late, often after 7 a.m., and to set late, with daylight lingering until well after 7 p.m. This creates long, bright evenings, but also means that for the first hour of every workday, the country operates in a kind of technical pre-dawn light. It is a quiet, city-wide illusion, a collective agreement to live 1 hour ahead of the sun for the sake of regional commercial synchronicity. If you walk down any street in Singapore and closely observe the pavement, you will notice the conspicuous absence of the black, hardened splotches of old chewing gum. This is because the import and sale of chewing gum has been banned since 1992, a measure introduced after vandals used gum to disrupt the newly opened MRT train system. This decision created a city that is famously, and strangely, free of one of the most common forms of urban litter. While therapeutic or dental gum is now available from a pharmacist, the casual sale and import of regular chewing gum remains forbidden. It is a small specific rule that has had a disproportionately large impact on the cleanliness of the city's public spaces, and a quiet reminder of Singapore's willingness to employ strict, and sometimes unusual, regulations to solve a problem, even a small and sticky one. The Merlion, a mythical creature with a lion's head and a fish's body, is Singapore's most famous icon. Spouting a continuous stream of water into Marina Bay for millions of tourists' photographs. Its debut, however, was less than majestic. On its official opening day in 1972, the brand new statue experienced a technical malfunction when its water pump broke down. For a significant portion of the day, the new national symbol stood silent, its mouth embarrassingly dry, which was a rather inauspicious start for a landmark intended to represent the nation's spirit and prosperity. The pump was eventually repaired, and the water has flowed more or less continuously ever since, but it remains a funny, humanizing detail in the story of a national icon, a quiet reminder that even symbols can have bad days. For a considerable time, smooth-coated otters were considered locally extinct in Singapore, driven away by polluted waterways and relentless urban development. In recent years, however, something wonderful has occurred. The otters have returned. Thanks to a decades-long effort to clean up the city's rivers, several families of these playful, charismatic animals have reclaimed the central waterways as their home. It is now a common and delightful sight to see a family of otters swimming and playing in the Singapore River or the Marina Bay Reservoir, seemingly unfazed by the urban environment. The image of these sleek, wild creatures frolicking in the water, with the gleaming skyscrapers of the financial district as their backdrop, is a strange and beautiful symbol of nature's resilience and its ability to return, even to the most unlikely of places. In the midst of a modern, bustling Singaporean neighborhood stands a building that seems to belong to another city, and perhaps another universe entirely. The Parkview Square office building is a grand, ornate tower constructed from granite, bronze and glass, its design a lavish tribute to the Art Deco style of the 1920s. It is covered in intricate details, including statues of historical figures and bronze effigies, while at its crown, stone gargoyles stare down at the street below. The building's dramatic, Gothic-inspired aesthetic has earned it the local nickname the Gotham Building, as it looks as if it were plucked straight from the pages of a Batman comic and dropped into the tropics. It is a strange and wonderful piece of architectural fantasy, a building that seems to be telling a much darker and more dramatic story than the sunny city that surrounds it. Singapore is renowned for its strict laws and its unwavering focus on public cleanliness, and one of the most legendary examples of this is a rule concerning public toilets. It is technically illegal to neglect to flush a public toilet after use, and in many restrooms, you will find small signs warning of potential fines for offenders. The idea of a sanitary police officer hiding in a cubicle to catch someone in the act has become a long-running local joke. While the rule is almost never enforced, its existence serves as a powerful statement of intent. It is a symbol of the city's deep-seated belief in social responsibility, and the notion that everyone has a part to play in maintaining public hygiene. It is a strange, specific rule that says a great deal about the city's character, even if it is mostly just a legend. The name Singapore is derived from the Malay words Singapura, which translates to Lion City. This name originates from a 14th century legend, in which a Sumatran prince, Sang Nila Utama, was exploring the island, and encountered a strange and powerful animal. His advisors identified it as a lion, which he took as a good omen, prompting him to found a city on that very spot. It is a wonderful foundation myth for the nation, but there is a strange and specific problem with the story. Lions have never been native to Singapore. The animal the prince almost certainly saw was a Malayan tiger, which was common in the region at the time. Thus, the Lion City is named after an animal that was never here, a case of legendary misidentification that has become a national brand, and a symbol of the city based on a beautiful, but factually incorrect, story. The durian may be revered as the king of fruits, but it is a king that is not welcome in many of Singapore's indoor spaces. Its smell is so powerful and pervasive that it is famously banned from hotels, offices, and most notably, the public transit system. On every MRT train and in every station, alongside the usual prohibitions against smoking or drinking, you will find a unique pictogram, a stylized image of the spiky durian fruit, with a bold red line through it. This is a very specific, and very Singaporean, regulation. The sign is a quiet, visual acknowledgement of the fruit's power to offend the noses of fellow commuters, a small, strange detail of daily life that symbolizes the city's need to balance personal pleasures with communal comfort in crowded public spaces. On the rustic island of Pulau Ubin, a short boat ride from the mainland, there is a small, quiet shrine, dedicated not to a traditional deity, but to a German girl. According to local law, she was the daughter of a coffee plantation owner during World War I. When British forces came to intern her family, she fled into the jungle, and tragically fell to her death from a cliff. Her body was discovered by local workers who gave her a proper burial, and over the years, her grave evolved into a shrine. People come to pray to her for good luck, particularly for winning lottery numbers, and they leave strange offerings at her altar, bottles of nail polish, tubes of lipstick, and even Barbie dolls. It is a strange and touching place, a unique folk religion that has grown up around a forgotten tragedy. Singapore is not a place one would typically associate with volcanic activity, yet it possesses one small, strange geological secret, a natural hot spring. For many years this was a very humble affair, consisting of little more than a set of pipes sticking out of the ground in a field in the northern part of the island, where people would come with buckets to collect the hot sulfuric water. Recently, however, the site has been transformed into a beautifully landscaped park. The Sembawang Hot Spring Park is now a place where visitors can sit on benches and soak their feet in cascading pools of the geothermally heated water, which flows from a central wellspring and is cooled to different temperatures in the various pools. It is a strange and wonderful anomaly, a little piece of volcanic warmth in a city built on a tropical swamp. A traditional zoo is an institution where you go during the day to observe animals. In 1994, Singapore opened a park that completely reversed this concept. The night safari was the world's first nocturnal zoo, based on the simple and brilliant idea that since most tropical animals are active at night, that is the best time to see them. The park is ingeniously designed, so that the visitors are the ones in the dark, moving quietly by tram or on foot along dimly lit paths. The animals, meanwhile, inhabit spacious, open enclosures that are subtly illuminated with soft, moon-like lighting, allowing you to observe them behaving naturally in a simulated nighttime environment. It is a strange and magical experience, a feeling of being a quiet observer in their world, rather than them being an exhibit in ours. Housed in the National Museum of Singapore is a large fragment of a rock known as the Singapore Stone, which is covered in a mysterious script that has never been fully deciphered. Believed to date from as early as the 11th century, it is a tantalizing clue to the island's ancient, pre-colonial past. This fragment, however, is all that remains of a much larger story. The original was a massive sandstone boulder that stood at the mouth of the Singapore River, completely covered in the same strange inscription. In 1843, British colonial engineers, deeming the boulder a hazard to shipping, unceremoniously blew it up to widen the river channel. It was an act of casual, almost thoughtless destruction of a priceless historical artifact, and the small piece that survives is a powerful, silent reminder of all that was lost. A cemetery is not typically a place one would choose for a beautiful afternoon walk, but the Japanese Cemetery Park in Singapore is a notable exception. As the largest Japanese cemetery in Southeast Asia, it is the final resting place for merchants, soldiers and civilians from the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Yet, it also functions as a public park, a surprisingly beautiful and serene space. It is particularly famous for its long, arched trellises that are completely covered in bougainvillea flowers, which in the right season, form stunning tunnels of vibrant pink and white blossoms. It is a strange and lovely juxtaposition, a place of rest and remembrance that is also a place of vibrant, living beauty, a popular spot for photographers, and those seeking a quiet, peaceful walk in a cemetery that feels more like a garden. There is a park in the western part of Singapore that appears as if it belongs in another country altogether. The Bukit Batok Town Park is affectionately nicknamed Little Guilin because its main feature, a towering granite rock face rising dramatically from a placid lake, bears a striking resemblance to the famous karst landscapes of Guilin in China. It is a stunning and dramatic vista, a perfect setting for a quiet, contemplative walk. This beautiful scenery, however, is entirely accidental. The park is actually a disused granite quarry, where the towering cliff is the scar from where the rock was cut away, and the placid lake is the pit that filled with rainwater after the quarry was abandoned. It is a beautiful example of nature reclaiming an industrial site and transforming it into something beautiful, a landscape created by destruction that has become a quiet, accidental echo of a more famous place. In one of the most expensive and highly developed parts of Singapore, immediately adjacent to the Botanic Gardens, there exists a large, mysterious tract of jungle known as Tyersall Park. This vast forested piece of prime real estate is still privately owned by the family of the Sultan of Johor, and remains completely inaccessible to the public. Hidden within this dense wild jungle are the ruins of two abandoned palaces, grand houses that were once the scene of royal life, but are now being slowly reclaimed by nature. The land is a strange anomaly in a city obsessed with development and efficient land use. It is a wild, private kingdom in the heart of the Republic, a place that exists on maps but cannot be visited, a tantalizing mystery of inaccessible history sleeping under a blanket of green. Singapore's approach to littering is famously strict, with fines for first-time offenders. For repeat offenders, however, there is a more unusual punishment, a corrective work order. This requires them to spend several hours cleaning a public space, such as a park or a beach. The true punishment, however, is not the labor itself, but the uniform they are required to wear. It is a bright, fluorescent green vest, and on the back, in bold letters, are words that translate to, "I am a litterbug." This punishment is explicitly designed for public shaming, a very visible and personal way of making an example of someone. It is a strange and specific form of justice, a quiet but powerful statement about the city's intolerance for even the smallest acts of public disorder. Craft beer breweries are typically found in industrial parks or trendy, ground-floor warehouses. But in Singapore, one exists in a very unlikely location. Level 33 holds the distinction of being the world's highest urban microbrewery, situated on the 33rd floor of a skyscraper in the heart of the financial district. The large copper brewing kettles are a prominent feature of the restaurant's decor, a strange and beautiful piece of industrial equipment in a sleek corporate setting. Here, you can drink a craft beer that was brewed just a few feet away from your table, all while enjoying a panoramic, multi-million-dollar view of the Marina Bay skyline. It is a strange and wonderful combination of industrial craft and corporate gloss, a brewery with its head, quite literally, in the clouds. If you wish to see what Singapore looked like in the 1960s, you can do so by taking a short boat ride to the island of Pulau Ubin. This small island off the northeastern coast serves as a living time capsule. While the mainland has transformed into a modern metropolis, life on Ubin has remained remarkably simple and slow. The few hundred residents who still live here mostly reside in simple wooden, kampung, houses, some on stilts, and rely on diesel generators for power and wells for water. The primary mode of transport is the bicycle. To visit Pulau Ubin is to take a step back in time, offering a glimpse into a quieter, more rustic way of life that has almost completely vanished from the rest of the country. It is a precious, living museum of the city's past. The statue of Sir Stamford Raffles, the founder of modern Singapore, is one of the city's most photographed landmarks. The famous pure white statue stands at the spot where he is believed to have first landed, looking out at the river with a confident, heroic pose. This famous statue, however, is a copy. The original statue is located in a different, less prominent spot in front of the Victoria Theatre, and it presents a very different impression. Cast in dark bronze, the original has a more somber, pensive feel. Raffles stands with his arms folded, looking not heroically towards the horizon, but thoughtfully towards the ground. It is a strange duplication, leaving the city with two statues of its founder. One, a bright, heroic myth for the tourists, and the other a darker, more thoughtful reality for those who know where to look. Haw Par Villa is unlike any other theme park. It has no rides, no mascots, and no candy floss. Instead, it is a surreal and sometimes terrifying park, filled with over 1,000 statues and dioramas depicting scenes from Chinese mythology and folklore. The park's most infamous attraction is the 10 Courts of Hell, a walk-through exhibit featuring graphic and gruesome statues that illustrate the punishments awaiting sinners in the afterlife. Here you can see brightly painted dioramas of people being sawn in half, thrown onto hills of knives, or disemboweled by demons. Created by the brothers who invented Tiger Balm as a place to teach traditional Chinese values, it is a strange, unsettling and utterly fascinating place. A bizarre moral lesson brought to life in vivid, nightmarish color, a theme park more likely to induce nightmares than dreams. The new housing estate of Bidadari is a modern, green and pleasant place to live. But the ground upon which it is built has a long history. For over a century, this was the site of a major historical cemetery, the final resting place for thousands of Christians, Muslims and Hindus. When the area was slated for redevelopment, a decision was made not to completely erase this past. As a quiet nod to the history of the site, some of the original, ornate headstones of prominent historical figures have been preserved. They have been carefully cleaned and integrated into the landscape design of the new park, creating a strange and poignant sight. A beautiful, old Victorian-era angel headstone standing gracefully amidst a modern playground, or along a new jogging path. A quiet, respectful conversation between the city's past and its present. For a generation of Singaporeans, Longkang, fishing is a cherished childhood memory. Longkang means drain in Malay, and children used to spend hours catching tiny guppies and other small fish in the vast network of storm drains that crisscross the island. Today, with most drains covered and sanitized, that simple pastime has all but disappeared. Nostalgia, however, is a powerful force, and the childhood game has now been revived as a commercial activity. At a few designated locations, you can pay a fee to relive the experience, where children are given a small net and a plastic bucket to catch tiny fish in a specially built, clean and sanitized concrete pond. It is a strange and specific example of the commodification of memory, a way to experience a piece of the past, but in a safe, clean and controlled modern environment. In Singapore, even the operation of a cat cafe is subject to strict government regulations. An owner cannot simply place a few cats in a room with some chairs. They must adhere to a detailed set of rules designed to protect the welfare of the animals. For example, the cats must be provided with a private, human-free rest area where they can retreat when they no longer wish to socialize. Furthermore, all cat cafes must have a double-door system similar to an airlock, to prevent the cats from escaping onto the street. These regulations treat the cats less like pets, and more like tiny, furry celebrities, whose privacy and security must be protected. It is a strange and specific set of rules that reveals how seriously the city takes the well-being of its commercial felines. Within the giant glass-domed cloud forest at Gardens by the Bay, there is a man-made mountain covered in high-altitude tropical plants. As you walk along the misty aerial walkways, you are immersed in a simulation of a real cloud forest. Hidden within this carefully constructed environment, however, is a strange piece of theater. At regular intervals, the lights dim, the sound of rumbling thunder fills the air, and bright flashes of artificial lightning illuminate the mist. It is a simulated mountain storm, a strange, periodic show, designed to mimic the conditions of a high-altitude environment. It is a bizarre and beautiful detail, a moment of manufactured drama in a glasshouse, and a reminder that in this hyper-controlled environment, even the weather is part of the show. A strange electric secret in the heart of the garden. Emerald Hill is a beautiful, quiet street, lined with ornate, historic shophouses. But if you look closely, you will find one that is very strange. It is a 3-story shophouse that is impossibly narrow, squeezed tightly between its much larger neighbors. The building is rumored to be a spite house. Local legend tells of a father who owned a plot of land that he was supposed to divide between his 2 sons, but after a falling out with one, he built a grand house for the favored son, and this strange, narrow house on the tiny sliver of land left over for the other. The true story is lost to time, but the strange, slender building remains, a quiet, architectural testament to a long-forgotten family feud, its unusual proportions, a lasting monument to some private grievance. Our walk through Singapore is coming to an end. Wherever you've drifted to, you don't need to come back. There's nothing more to listen for tonight. Sleep well.